The Skinwalker. Freddy cherished moments like these, away from the clamor of city life, immersed in the natural symphony of the wilderness. The rhythmic chants of cicadas and the distant calls of owls formed a comforting backdrop to his annual camping trip. His tent nestled by the river's edge, where the soothing rush of water served as his nightly lullaby. On the second day of his retreat, after rinsing his utensils at the riverbank, Freddy returned to find a tent pitched nearby that hadn't been there moments before. Perplexed but undeterred, he brushed it off and settled in for the night, comforted by the familiar sounds of the forest. Later, a laborious wheeze shattered the silence, jolting Freddy awake. He blinked rapidly, his senses heightened by a sickly, inhuman groan echoing through the trees. Heart racing, he lay frozen in fear, pulling his duvet over his head as he activated the feed from his self-made thermal cameras. To his disbelief, Freddy watched on the screen as a grotesquely disfigured figure crawled past his tent, its movements unnaturally contorted and accompanied by the eerie crackling of bones. A bone-chilling scream tore through the air, followed by an unsettling silence. Suddenly, a woman emerged from the darkness, naked and bearing a hauntingly serene expression. Without a word, she slipped into the mysterious tent that had appeared earlier, disappearing into its depths. Unable to shake off the unnerving sight, Freddy's mind raced with questions. Who was the woman? What was the creature he had witnessed? And most importantly, what lay hidden within that mysterious tent? As dawn approached, Freddy's curiosity outweighed his fear. Armed with a flashlight and cautious determination, he approached the tent that had intruded upon his solitude. Each step echoed louder in the quiet morning, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. Drawing closer, he noticed strange symbols etched into the fabric, pulsating faintly with an otherworldly glow. With a deep breath, Freddy unzipped the tent flap, revealing a darkness that seemed to swallow the light. Inside, he found remnants of an ancient ritual, a circle of candles burned low, a weathered animal hide, and traces of an unknown substance smeared across the ground. The copycat creature. Humming an old tune, Amy stared into the crackling fire, its amber flames devouring the wood with a wicked flicker. The forest around her seemed alive with shadows dancing in the firelight, casting eerie shapes that played tricks on her mind. As she hummed softly to herself, the sound echoed back, accompanied by a faint, distorted version of her own voice. Amy's heart skipped a beat, and she froze, her eyes darting nervously into the darkness that enveloped the clearing. "Hello. Is someone there?" she called out, her voice wavering with a mix of curiosity and unease. To her horror, the echo of her voice returned, but this time, it sounded subtly different, as if mocking her from somewhere deep within the woods. A chill ran down Amy's spine, and she scrambled to her feet, her mind racing with fear. "Who's out there?" she shouted, her voice trembling as she scanned the perimeter of the clearing. Silence greeted her, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. Just as she was about to dismiss it as her imagination, a sudden gust of wind extinguished the fire in an instant, plunging Amy into darkness. Panic gripped her as she fumbled for her flashlight, her hands trembling uncontrollably. With trembling hands, she finally managed to switch on the flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness like a lifeline. But what she saw next froze her blood. Standing at the edge of the clearing, illuminated by the faint glow of her flashlight, was a figure, a silhouette that seemed to waver and distort in the shifting shadows. Its eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light, fixed on Amy with an intensity that sent a shiver down her spine. Heart pounding, Amy took a tentative step back, her mind reeling with fear and confusion. The figure remained motionless, its presence radiating a palpable sense of malevolence that seemed to seep into the very air around her. A sudden movement caught Amy's attention, a flicker of movement at the corner of her eye. She whipped around, only to find herself surrounded by more shadowy figures, their forms shifting and blending into the darkness like specters. Desperate and terrified, Amy turned to flee, but her path was blocked by the advancing shadows. They closed in around her, their whispers echoing in her ears, a cacophony of indiscernible voices that chilled her to the core. With nowhere to run, Amy stumbled backwards, her flashlight flickering as if struggling against the encroaching darkness. The figures drew closer, their eyes glowing with an unnatural hunger as they reached out with gnarled, shadowy hands. In a final, desperate act of defiance, Amy screamed, her voice echoing through the night with a raw intensity. The sound seemed to pierce the veil of darkness, momentarily halting the advance of the shadowy figures. But it was too late. The darkness engulfed her, swallowing her cries as she disappeared into its depths. The forest fell silent once more, save for the faint echoes of Amy's scream, a haunting reminder of the terror that lurked within the woods. The werewolf. Ben had been laughing just moments ago, the sound echoing through the abandoned cabin where they had sought shelter. Now, he stood off to the side, his laughter replaced by trembling breaths of exertion. Linda, his companion, felt a chill crawl up her spine as she approached him cautiously. "Ben, what's wrong?" Linda asked, her voice tinged with concern. She kept a firm grip on her gun, sensing something unsettling in the air. For what felt like an eternity, Ben remained silent, his eyes wide with fear. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with pain and urgency, sending a shiver down Linda's spine. "Run!" Ben's urgent exclamation cut through the air, chilling Linda to the bone. Instinctively, she began to pull her gun from its holster, her senses on high alert. Before she could react, Ben's body convulsed violently. Linda gasped in horror as she watched his skin begin to distort, revealing sinister gashes that seemed to shift and crackle with an unnatural transformation. His features contorted with agony, his eyes glowing with an eerie intensity. Turning towards Linda with pleading eyes, Ben urged her to leave with a sense of urgency, as fur sprouted along his hands and face. "Get out of here." Terror gripped Linda's heart as she stumbled backwards, her mind racing with disbelief and fear. Whatever had taken over Ben was not human, it was a manifestation of horror that defied comprehension. The air around them thickened with a malevolent presence, suffocating in cold. Shadows seemed to writhe and pulse with a life of their own, creeping closer with each passing second. Desperate to escape the unfolding nightmare, Linda backed away slowly, her gun trembling in her hand. She knew she had to leave, to survive whatever unholy force had possessed her friend. But as she turned to flee, a deafening roar echoed through the warehouse, a primal scream that shook the very foundation of reality. The shadows lunged forward, engulfing Ben in darkness. With a final, agonized cry, Ben disappeared into the darkness, consumed by the malevolent force that had taken hold of him. The cabin fell silent once more, the only sound the echo of Linda's ragged breaths and the faint whisper of the wind through broken windows. Shaken to her core, Linda stumbled out of the cabin, her mind reeling with the horrors she had witnessed. She knew she would never forget the sight of Ben's transformation, or the terror in his eyes as he pleaded for her to escape. As she fled into the night, Linda vowed to uncover the truth behind what had happened, to confront the darkness that had claimed her friend and ensure that no one else would fall prey to its sinister grasp. The Lost One. The crisp air of the forest was filled with the sounds of nocturnal life as four friends, Alex, Maria, Jake, and Emma, sat around their campfire, their laughter and stories a warm contrast to the surrounding darkness. They had been planning this camping trip for months, eager to escape the stress of city life and immerse themselves in nature. As the fire crackled and the conversation flowed, a faint rustling from the trees caught Alex's attention. He turned his head, squinting into the shadows. "Did you guys hear that?" he asked, his voice tinged with curiosity. Maria laughed, "Probably just an animal. Relax, Alex." But the rustling grew louder, and from the edge of the clearing, a small figure emerged, a young girl, no older than 7, with wide, tear-filled eyes. She wore a tattered dress, her feet bare and dirty. "Help me, please," the girl whimpered, her voice weak and trembling. "I'm lost." The campers exchanged worried glances before Emma stood up and approached the child. "Hey there, sweetie. What's your name? Where are your parents?" The girl looked up at Emma with large, innocent eyes. "My name is Lily. I don't know where my parents are. I got lost." Emma's heart ached for the child. "It's okay, Lily. We'll help you find your parents. Come, sit by the fire and warm up." As Lily sat down, the warmth of the fire seemed to calm her, but there was something about her that made Alex uneasy. The way her eyes darted around, the subtle smirk that sometimes played at the corners of her mouth, it didn't seem right. Maybe we should take her back to the ranger station, Jake suggested, trying to sound practical despite the late hour. Good idea, Maria agreed. But it's quite a hike. Are you up for it, Lily? Lily nodded, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes that made Alex shiver. I can walk. Just stay with me. The group packed up their essentials and started down the forest trail, Lily leading the way. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the path seemed to grow more tangled, the trees denser, the shadows darker. We've been walking for a while, Maria said, glancing at her watch. Shouldn't we have reached the ranger station by now? Lily stopped and turned, her innocent facade slipping away to reveal a malevolent grin. We're almost there, she said, her voice taking on an eerie, echoing quality that sent chills down their spines. The forest around them seemed to close in, the darkness becoming almost palpable. The once familiar path was now a maze of gnarled roots and twisted branches, and the campers' flashlights flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. Lily, what's going on? Emma demanded, fear creeping into her voice. Lily's grin widened, her eyes glowing with an unnatural light. You shouldn't have followed me, she whispered, her voice a chilling echo that seemed to come from all around them. Now you can never leave. Panic set in as the friends tried to retrace their steps, but every path they took seemed to lead them deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to shift and change, their branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Alex felt a cold hand grip his wrist and turned to see Lily standing impossibly close, her eyes burning with a sinister light. Stay with me, she hissed, her voice no longer childlike but deep and resonant, filled with malice. One by one, the campers felt the cold grip of fear as Lily's true form emerged, a dark, twisted entity that thrived on their terror. The forest itself seemed to come alive, shadows swirling and voices whispering from the depths. Desperate and terrified, Alex tried to break free, but the darkness was relentless. The last thing he saw before the forest swallowed him was the gleeful, malevolent smile of the entity that had once appeared as an innocent child. By dawn, the clearing was empty, the campfire long extinguished. There was no sign of the campers, only the silent forest and the faint echo of laughter that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere all at once. The lure of Blackwater Lake. Deep within the heart of Blackwood Forest lay a serene and picturesque body of water known as Blackwater Lake. By day, it was a place of tranquility, its surface reflecting the vibrant green of the surrounding trees and the deep blue of the sky. But as night fell, the lake took on a more sinister quality, one that the locals whispered about but rarely spoke of aloud. Despite the warnings, a group of friends, Mark, Lisa, Tom, and Emily, decided to camp near the lake. They had heard the legends but dismissed them as nothing more than old wives' tales designed to scare away curious visitors. Come on, it's just a lake, Mark said as they set up their tents near the shore. Nothing to be afraid of. The first night passed uneventfully, and the friends enjoyed their time swimming and exploring the area. As dusk settled on the second day, a strange, almost hypnotic hum began to emanate from the lake, carried on the breeze. It was soft at first, barely noticeable, but soon it grew louder, more insistent. Emily was the first to notice. Do you guys hear that? She asked, her eyes narrowing as she tried to pinpoint the source of the sound. Yeah, it's like a humming, Tom replied, a puzzled expression on his face. Lisa shrugged it off. Probably just insects or something. We're in the middle of a forest, after all. As night fell, the hum grew louder, almost melodic, like a siren's call. It seemed to weave its way into their thoughts, drawing them closer to the water's edge. Mark, usually the most rational of the group, found himself irresistibly drawn to the sound. I think we should check it out, he said, his voice dreamy, as if in a trance. Are you crazy? Lisa snapped. We came here to relax, not to chase weird noises in the dark. But Mark was already moving towards the lake, the hum growing louder with each step. Unable to resist, Tom and Emily followed, leaving Lisa no choice but to go along, though her gut screamed at her to turn back. As they reached the water's edge, the surface of the lake shimmered with an unnatural light, casting eerie reflections on their faces. The hum had turned into a soft, beckoning voice, whispering promises of wonder and discovery. Mark leaned closer, peering into the depths. "Do you see that?" he whispered, his eyes wide with fascination. "There's something down there." Suddenly, the water rippled, and a dark shape emerged just below the surface. It was large and amorphous, its true form obscured by the murky water. The friends took a collective step back, their trance momentarily broken by the sight. "Let's get out of here," Lisa urged, her voice trembling. "Something's not right." But before they could react, tendrils of water shot up from the lake, wrapping around Mark's ankles and yanking him forward. He screamed, but the sound was quickly muffled as he was dragged into the depths. Panic set in, and the remaining three scrambled to get away. The water surged again, and this time, it was Emily who was caught. She clawed at the ground, her fingernails breaking as she tried to hold on, but the tendrils were too strong. "Help me!" she shrieked, her voice echoing across the lake. But it was too late. She, too, was pulled under, her cries swallowed by the darkness. Tom and Lisa ran, their hearts pounding with terror. They reached the safety of their campsite, but the humming followed them, growing louder, more insistent. The ground beneath them trembled, and they could feel the lake's pull, as if it were alive, reaching out for them. "Keep running," Tom shouted, but as they neared the forest edge, the ground gave way beneath him. He fell, his body tumbling into a hidden sinkhole that led straight to the water's edge. Lisa watched in horror as the tendrils reached up and dragged him in. "No!" she screamed, tears streaming down her face. Alone and desperate, Lisa sprinted into the forest, the humming still ringing in her ears. She didn't stop until she collapsed from exhaustion, her body trembling with fear. The next morning, a search party found Lisa wandering the edge of the forest, her eyes vacant and her mind shattered. She was the only one to survive, but the lake's call had left its mark on her. She could still hear the hum, a constant reminder of the friends she had lost. Blackwater Lake remained, its surface deceptively calm, waiting for the next group of curious souls to draw near, ready to claim them as its own. And the locals continued to whisper their warnings, knowing that the lake's hunger was never truly sated.